Lucy, congrats! Let's work on fixing those clumsy traits you got from Dad from now on. Yeah, right. I heard cheerful voices from the back. Seems like a kid's birthday. But I couldn't help but notice that the man's voice sounded somewhat like Sean. Curiosity sparked, I wanted to see his face. I turned my seat diagonally behind to catch a glimpse. And there he was, Sean himself, who was supposed to be on a business trip. All those times Sean claimed to be on business trips and left the house, it must have been because of this. I never once doubted Sean. When I confronted Sean's colleague, I found out that even before marrying me, the company policy was not to travel but to hold remote meetings with the companies at the travel destinations. Since when had Sean been deceiving me? What did I do wrong? But there's no use pondering over that now. I feel sorry for the kid, but I can't forgive those two. I'll make sure they see hell. My name is Rose. I'm 34 years old and I'm a freelancer working from home. I haven't seen my parents since I turned 20. So now I live with my in-laws at my husband's hometown. My husband is Sean Hirayama, 35 years old, in sales. Sean's company seems to prioritize business trips for sales, and it's common for him to go on trips several times a month or not come home for months. People who get married seem to avoid long business trips, but even so, he's often away from home several times a month, so it'd be a lie to say I'm not lonely. Originally, I lived in Florida, and Sean coming to my company on a business trip was how we met. I was at the reception, and Sean seemed to fall for me at first sight and pursued me fiercely. At that time, Sean was supposed to stay in Florida for 2 months, and he appealed to me almost every day for those 2 months. I succumbed to Sean's passion and started dating, but it quickly turned into a long-distance relationship. After 2 years of long distance, our relationship was going smoothly, and he proposed on our 3rd anniversary. I married Sean's hometown. Since he's often away from home, we decided to live with my in-laws out of concern. At first, I tried my best to get along with my in-laws in an unfamiliar place, but now I regret why we decided to live together. We've been married for 3 years now, but we still don't have any children. I want children right away, but Sean isn't enthusiastic about trying to conceive, giving various reasons like wanting to wait for it to happen naturally or wanting to save money. And perhaps growing impatient with that, my mother-in-law has become more assertive. You two have been married for 3 years. Don't you want to have children? Well, if you don't, that's fine, isn't it? People around us are having children left and right. My mother-in-law's words stab me in the chest. Even though I want to retort to my mother-in-law, all I can do is force a smile. Seemingly displeased with that, my mother-in-law says to me, "Rose, how long are you going to keep laughing like that? What's so funny? Why don't you retort? It's creepy." Oh mother. What's wrong? Why are you suddenly saying such things? I don't like how you always laugh like that. If you have something to say, just say it. You laugh one moment and then have a dark face the next. You're working despite marrying Sean. Why did you marry Sean? Wouldn't you be happier leaving? My mother-in-law's words make my chest tighten. Today, she's particularly persistent, constantly nagging and complaining. Every day, I'm told things like watch me make a better meal than you're not doing the cleaning properly, quit your job, and so on. I talked to Sean about it. But all Sean says is deal with it yourself or I'm tired. I've even asked if we're running low on money. Since we got married, our money has been gradually decreasing. The reason being, Sean says, is because we've been going out drinking more often and there have been various expenses. It doesn't make sense, but if I persist, it'll cause trouble, so I stopped pressing the issue there. I was nearing my limit. Lately, I've been tired from my mother-in-law constantly saying things like your parents aren't here anymore and are you dissatisfied with me? My father-in-law is currently on a business trip abroad. I'm often alone with my mother-in-law, so I've been trying to avoid conversation as much as possible by working late. One day, I said I was going out to buy dinner and left the house. I wanted to stroll around alone for a bit, so I headed to a supermarket about 3 stations away. While walking through town, I spotted someone who looked like Sean walking with a woman. They quickly got lost in the crowd, leaving me feeling unsettled. I reassured myself that it wasn't Sean and tried to calm down. After finishing shopping and returning home, my mother-in-law's sarcastic remarks flew at me as usual. "You were quite late. You could have just not come back, you know?" She said that, but I couldn't even force a smile today. I was preoccupied with thoughts of Sean. What? Ignoring me? If you have something to say, say it. No, I don't have any complaints. It's just that something caught my attention while I was out shopping today. As I said that, my mother-in-law stared at my face intently. It seemed like she was waiting for me to tell her what was bothering me. Summoning my courage, I told my mother-in-law about Sean. Well, actually, when I went to a supermarket a bit far away for shopping, I saw Sean walking with another woman in town. I hope it was just my mistake. Huh? Sean? Not my son, are you sure? Whether she got angry at my words or not, my mother-in-law turned red and returned to her room. I quickly finished a simple dinner and went to bed early to avoid thinking about unnecessary things. The next day, Sean returned from his business trip. It's a bit helpful when Sean comes back because we can go shopping by car. When I asked to borrow the car because I wanted to go shopping, Sean hastily left the house, saying, "It's dirty now. Wait here, I'll quickly clean it up. Stay inside." After a while, he came back holding what looked like 2 garbage bags. Phew, it was so messy I could have been scolded. LOL. Oh, by the way, put your stuff in the back seat. Don't open the trunk because I've got some work stuff in there. I agreed and went out shopping by car. And then, carelessly, I opened the trunk of the car to put in my belongings. There wasn't anything that looked like it could be used for work in the trunk. What was there was a large stuffed dog about knee height for an adult and a toy set for playing house. It was neatly wrapped in a transparent bag, and there was a note attached to the ribbon at the top of the bag saying "Happy 4th birthday." And from Mom and Dad. I thought I saw something I shouldn't have, but at the same time, questions arose. Who was the present for, and what did "from Mom and Dad" mean? As soon as I got back, I confronted Sean. "Why did you open the trunk?" "Oh, that's a birthday present for the daughter of a close colleague." "But it said "from Mom and Dad"? Oh, one is a gift from me, and the other one is a gift from that colleague to his daughter. I'm holding on to it because he wants to keep it a secret until the day." With that, he said, "I have a business trip for about 2 weeks starting tomorrow," and quickly headed to the bedroom. The confusion remained, but asking further would only worsen Sean's mood. I had no choice but to accept Sean's explanation. 3 days later, my mother-in-law unusually went out for lunch with a friend from the morning. Today, I decided to go to a newly opened family restaurant a little farther away, partly for a change of pace. When I arrived at the family restaurant, it seemed like the peak had passed, and there were few people inside. I was led to my seat by the waiter. As I sat down, I heard cheerful voices from the back. I couldn't help but envy them, thinking this might be what it's like when you have children. It seemed to be the daughter's birthday, and I could hear the family's conversation. "Lucy, congrats! Let's work on fixing those clumsy traits you got from Dad from now on, okay?" "Yeah, right." I thought the man's voice sounded somewhat like Sean. Curiosity sparked, I wanted to see his face. I turned my seat diagonally behind to catch a glimpse. And there he was, Sean himself, who was supposed to be on a business trip. "My daughter is the cutest in the world. Here, it's your birthday present. Open it when you get home, okay?" What Sean gave to his daughter was the same as what I saw in the trunk. The face of a father that Sean had never seen before. Seeing Sean's incredibly happy face, something inside me snapped. From where I was sitting, I could capture all 3 of them on video. Fortunately, several couples had left since I arrived, and since Sean and the others were talking loudly, their voices should be picked up as well. I started recording a video of the 3 of them with my phone. I took video of them happily laughing for a few minutes, then left the family restaurant. What to do with this video and photos, and how to inflict damage on Sean. I decided to go home once and devise a plan. Come to think of it, I remembered exchanging contact information with Sean's colleague just in case something happened. I called that person and said I wanted to talk when Sean wasn't on a business trip. A business trip? He hasn't been on one for a long time, you know? Remote meetings are the main thing now, so you can do them at home or in the office. Except for emergencies, there's hardly any traveling. Isn't Sean working from home? Surprised by this revelation. According to the colleague, there have been hardly any business trips for about 3 years now. He switched to remote work, got promoted to team leader, and even received a remote work allowance. And I heard his salary went up. But the money being brought into the house hasn't changed, if anything, it's decreased. Then why did Sean claim he was on business trips and where was he going? A new question arose. I showed the colleague the face of the woman who was with Sean. Apparently, she resembled a woman who worked briefly as a temp at the company a few years ago. Sean must have met her at that time and had a relationship with her. I thanked the colleague and hung up the phone. Anger began to well up inside me. Perhaps the reason Sean was hesitant to have children with me was because he already had a child with that woman. It made sense that he hadn't come home, perhaps he was staying at her place. I copied the video and photos onto DVDs. I made multiple copies and sent them to the company and all our relatives. The next evening, Sean, who had claimed to be on a 2-week business trip, returned in less than 2 weeks. Did you send something weird to the company? They called me in today and showed me a DVD. What the hell was that? What was that? Don't you understand it better than anyone else? As I said this and laughed, Sean tried to raise his hand. At that moment, my mother-in-law, who had been out, returned. She shouted loudly, "Sean!" and shouted his name. Sean's movement stopped. What's with raising your hand at a woman? Are you two fighting? What on earth happened? Explain everything to me. I tried to hand the copied DVD to my mother-in-law. However, Sean snatched the DVD and tore it in half. He probably didn't want his own mother to know. So, I approached my mother-in-law and offered her my phone. Sean seemed clueless about what I was doing. The original files were on my phone. I showed the photos on my phone and then played the video. The moment the sound from the video played, Sean came towards me saying, "Stop it." But when my mother-in-law said, "Sit down," he reluctantly did so. After watching the video, my mother-in-law returned my phone to me and sat quietly on the sofa. Well? Does Sean have anything to say? I was slightly taken aback by my mother-in-law's words. Was she going to be on my side? I felt a bit relieved. My mother-in-law immediately called my father-in-law and said, "There's a problem, come back immediately." My father-in-law's return would be as early as tomorrow night. Perhaps resigned to his fate, Sean began to speak. I've been dating Linda since before I married Rose. We had a child together, but since I was already planning to marry Rose, I couldn't do anything and ended up continuing the relationship in a sort of common law marriage style. In return, Linda asked me not to have children with her. So everything you told me was a lie, then? You told me that Rose was refusing to have children. You were just trying to shift the blame onto Rose to protect yourself, right? My mother-in-law interjected, and Sean nodded in agreement. My mother-in-law sighed and apologized to me. Both Sean and I were surprised by my mother-in-law's actions. She took out what looked like an envelope from her bag and handed it to me. She asked me to check what was inside. Inside was the result of an investigation by a private detective agency. Thinking she was suspecting me, I started reading, only to realize it was an investigation on Sean. It detailed Sean's affair with another woman. When I heard from Rose that she saw you with another woman in town, I hired a private detective agency. We needed to find out if it was true or not. But before we could do that, it seems Rose found something conclusive. Mother. Perhaps I had misunderstood something. My mother-in-law turned to face Sean and began to speak. Sean, you've done something outrageous, you know? Do you understand? Divorce Rose. Yeah. You're right. I'll divorce Rose. In exchange, I'll marry Lucy. So, Lucy and our daughter will live here with us. Mom, you've been wanting a grandchild, right? Now you'll get to live with your long-awaited grandchild. While I agreed to divorce Sean, hearing such a statement at that moment made me want to cry. Perhaps noticing my feelings, my mother-in-law intervened, suggesting we wait until my father-in-law returned to discuss this further. For now, she asked Sean to leave the house. Sean agreed, saying, "I'll tell Dad when he gets back," and left the house. Rose, I'm truly sorry about my son. Inside the envelope is the divorce papers. Sean will make it official tomorrow, but I want you to sign it today. Shall we order dinner, maybe takeout? My mother-in-law offered, trying to ease the tension. Accepting her offer, we ate in silence, and that night we retired early. Despite my mother-in-law's apparent defense of me in that moment, she had always been critical and cold towards me. Perhaps for her, our divorce and Sean living with the child from his affair was a good outcome. Maybe that's why she recommended divorce. Even the private detective's investigation could confirm our divorce if it found evidence of Sean's infidelity. If there was already a grandchild, then I was no longer needed. I understood all of this, but seeing it firsthand still made me feel lonely. Realizing there was no point in dwelling on it further, I decided to sleep, preparing for the next day. The next day, my father-in-law returned home in the afternoon. He had hurried back with the help of an acquaintance who was a pilot. Before I could enter the living room, my mother-in-law had apparently already briefed my father-in-law on everything. He remained silent, deep in thought. Then he uttered cryptic words, I see. I understand what needs to be said. I feel the same way. Since I hadn't heard the conversation between my father-in-law and mother-in-law, I didn't understand what they were talking about. But I assumed he had agreed to live with them after divorcing me. In the early afternoon, Sean and the others arrived home in high spirits. It seemed they had left their daughter with Linda's parents, her affair partner. When Linda saw me, she approached and said, "Oh, you're Sean's ex-wife, right? Hi, I'm Linda, who will be Sean's new wife. You wanted to have a child, but Sean told you not to, so you couldn't. Sorry about that. And it's a pity, isn't it? Since you don't have parents anymore, you'll be spending your time alone from now on, won't you?" Hearing that Sean had even discussed such matters with Lucy made me not just angry, but also incredulous. My mother-in-law urged everyone to sit down, and the discussion began. Before going to bed the night before, I had written the divorce papers and left them on the desk. Without any hesitation, Sean signed them immediately. Confirming Sean's signature, my mother-in-law began to speak. With this, the divorce is settled. Hold on to it carefully until after the discussion is over, and then submit it. Thank you, Mother, Father. I'll be relying on you from now on. Before we start the discussion, there's something I want you all to see. My mother-in-law said, ignoring Lucy's protests, and retrieved the same envelope from yesterday. Linda showed signs of irritation at her attitude. As we all examined its contents, we found photos of her meeting several men inside. "What's this?" Sean exclaimed, scrutinizing the photos closely. Linda's face turned pale. I wonder if that girl is really Sean's child. Although I'm not familiar with getting involved in such matters, it might be necessary to confirm it once. But that's your problem, so discuss it later. But, since we're going to live together from now on, shouldn't we do a DNA test? Looking puzzled, my mother-in-law said, "Live together? Well, let's finish this first," and glanced at me. Meeting her eyes, I felt a chill run down my spine. It seemed my mother-in-law had arranged for a lawyer acquaintance to prepare documents, including compensation, which she handed to each of us. The amount surprised me. Sean was to pay me $100,000 in compensation, and Linda the same amount. Sean muttered, "This much." Linda protested, "Why me?" but my mother-in-law silenced them both. Considering the time that has passed, this amount seems appropriate. If you're not satisfied, why not try going to court? Unless Rose agrees to lower the amount in a settlement. Sean looked at me with pleading eyes. If I didn't say it now, I would never get back at Sean. No, I absolutely refuse to settle. Both of you will pay this compensation amount. I've suffered, so it's only fair, right? I'll make you pay, even if it means going into debt. Having a child doesn't change anything. It's the price for what you both did. You shouldn't get too cocky. That's my line. Descend into debt hell. With a smirk, my mother-in-law chuckled and said, finally speaking your mind, aren't you? I felt pleased to be praised by my mother-in-law like that. Sean said that we would live together, but that's impossible. From now on, my child is only with Rose. Sean, I'm cutting ties with you. Live your life as you please. Everyone except my father-in-law present was astonished. Sean turned pale. Under my mother-in-law's direction, he was promptly escorted out. Then, the three of us began to talk. When I mentioned that I felt disliked by my mother-in-law, she expressed surprise, saying, that can't be true. My father-in-law burst into laughter upon seeing us. My wife cannot be honest at times. She may seem cold, but she always talked about you to me. She was delighted to have a lovely daughter and was eager to teach you various things. It seems to have backfired. But I was told not to come back, and about the child. I'll speak on her behalf. When she said not to come back, she probably meant to go out and spread your wings more freely. And about the child, she said it was fine not to have one if you didn't want to. If you didn't want to, there was also the option of adoption. It seems she always complained about not expressing her true feelings, just laughing all the time. I looked at my mother-in-law, realizing the situation. Her face turned bright red, embarrassed. We were then proposed to live together as mother and daughter. Since my own parents were no longer around, and I had learned my mother-in-law's true feelings, I wanted to live with her. The three of us went to the city office, submitted the divorce papers, and then headed to dinner. Sean and Linda complained about how suing would ruin their reputation, but eventually chose to pay the $100,000 each, albeit grudgingly. I thought it didn't matter anymore what society thought, as long as they paid. I decided to keep my thoughts of them suffering from debt to myself. As for what happened to Sean and Linda after that, it seemed they didn't get married. Sean thought the child was his, but it turned out he wasn't the father. They fought over this and broke up. Sean was demoted at work and sent to a remote location. Despite borrowing money to pay off the compensation, they were shunned by relatives after I sent the DVDs. It seems they were abandoned by their friends as well. So quitting the job was not an option for them. He came to my house once, asking for reconciliation, but I firmly refused. When I warned him not to appear in front of me again, he started saying, "It's strange for my parents to live with you." I insisted that no matter what, we had become a family. Seeing Sean crying in frustration, I couldn't understand why I had ever liked him. When I threatened to call the police if he continued to stay, he walked away dejectedly. As for Linda, she entrusted her child to her parents and is apparently attending matchmaking events to find a man who will take over her debts. Her parents were so disappointed with Linda that they disowned her, taking their granddaughter with them, saying they would raise her themselves. Linda lost everyone, her child, the man, and her parents. I don't know where she is or what she's doing now. She's no longer relevant to me, so I don't care what happened to her. But it seemed that her daughter was thriving under Linda's parents' care, and I thought that was a good thing. Since then, my father-in-law has returned overseas for work, but I feel closer to my mother-in-law. We enjoy shopping together and going on trips, although she still speaks harshly at times. I can't help but smile, knowing she does it out of concern for me. Now that the misunderstanding with my mother-in-law has been cleared up and she treats me as a true family member, I can't help but feel grateful. I'm excited about the fun life ahead of us. I'm not thinking about marriage right now, but when the time comes, I want to proudly introduce my partner as my mother.